This is a hobby author publishing presentation, where my hobby is your entertainment. Welcome back to Shadows of Secrets. The hunt for the Temptress has unearthed a ghost from the past, the Moonrats, a defunct thieves guild with a shocking connection to Gerrod's mother, Elysia. Now, a single artifact, a Moonrat cipher wheel, is their only key to understanding this deadly new player. But a code without its key is useless, and the trail has gone cold. Today, in Chapter 9, Elysia's Gambit, our heroes must return to the Lion's Den, searching for a secret hidden in plain sight. But they'll soon discover they are not just solving a puzzle, they are walking a path laid out for them by a master manipulator.
Chapter 9, Elysia's Gambit. The discovery of the cipher wheel shifted the atmosphere in the derelict hall from frustrated searching to wary caution. This wasn't just a dead end, it felt like a turning point, potentially orchestrated. "We can't stay here," Gerrod stated quietly, his eyes still fixed on the intricate device in Ace's hand. "This place feels exposed. If this was left for someone, they might return, or whoever set the trap might be watching." Ace nodded grimly, carefully placing the cipher wheel inside a concealed pouch beneath his armor. "Agreed. We examine this back at the Rusted Flagon's cellar. Safer there." He moved back to the hidden compartment, meticulously replacing the loose floorboard, scattering dust and small debris over it to mimic the surrounding decay as best he could. They lingered a moment longer, scanning the oppressive darkness, listening intently, but the ruin remained silent, guarding its secrets. Retracing their steps felt different now, charged with the weight of the artifact and the unanswered questions it represented. They slipped back out through the narrow opening beneath the lintel, Ace wedging the loose board back into place from the outside. They moved through the decaying old guild quarter with heightened vigilance, acutely aware that the feeling of being watched might not just be paranoia. Every flickering shadow seemed deeper. Every gust of wind through broken windows sounded like a whisper. They navigated the labyrinthine streets back towards the slightly more frequented, though still disreputable district where they'd secured a temporary base. The damp, disused cellar beneath a noisy tavern called the Rusted Flagon. Descending the creaking wooden steps, they entered the low-ceilinged space, the familiar smell of stale beer, damp earth, and their own meager supplies a welcome, if mundane, contrast to the ancient decay they'd left behind. Ace barred the heavy cellar door from the inside, while Gerrod lit a small oil lamp, its steady yellow glow pushing back the oppressive shadows and revealing their few belongings scattered around the cramped space. Ace retrieved the cipher wheel, placing it carefully on a rough wooden crate they used as a table. In the lamp's steady light, the intricate carvings and tarnished brass seemed even more pronounced. The faded Moonrat symbols pulsing with latent meaning. They gathered around it, the weight of its potential significance pressing down on them, a key to forgotten codes, a link to the mysterious Temptress, and perhaps, unsettlingly, a connection to Gerrod's own hidden past. Ace picked up the device, his thick fingers surprisingly deft as they explored its surfaces. He turned the concentric rings, listening to the faint, dry clicks as symbols aligned and misaligned. The wood felt smooth beneath decades of handling, the brass cool and solid. "Haven't seen one of these in, gods, must be 60, 70 years, he murmured, his brow furrowed in concentration. Moonrats love their little puzzles. Overcomplicated, if you ask me, but clever. He ran a thumb over the faded crescent moon symbol. Their codes weren't simple substitution, always layered, usually needed a keyword, sometimes a phrase, tied to the moon cycle or, well, rat nests, usually. A grim chuckle escaped him. Had a nasty habit of changing keys weekly, based on whatever scrap of verse some gutter poet was spouting down by the east gate. His fingers traced the interlocking triangles, the entry symbol, on the outermost ring. This outer ring likely sets the primary key alignment, the inner ones. He gently rotated a smaller, inner disc marked with numbers and less familiar glyphs. These would handle variations, maybe numerical shifts or symbol substitutions based on the primary key. He tested the mechanism, feeling the precise way the rings clicked into place. Well made, holds its alignment firmly securely, even after all this time. Gerrod watched intently, his usual stillness charged with a nervous energy. The connection to his mother, however tenuous, made every click of the wheel resonate deep within him. "Can you decipher it?" he asked, his voice quiet but strained. Ace sighed, setting the wheel back down. "Understand how it works? I? Make it talk? Not without the key, Gerrod. This thing's useless without the right word or phrase to set the initial alignment. Without that key, it's just circles and scratches." The intricate device lay silent on the crate, a locked box holding secrets they desperately needed, its key lost somewhere in the shadows of the past, or perhaps held only by the Temptress herself. Ace fiddled with the concentric rings, aligning the Moonrat symbol with different letters on the adjacent ring, then trying to correlate the inner numerical discs. Each attempt yielded only gibberish when he tried applying simple substitution patterns he recalled from his youth. He growled low in his throat, the sound vibrating with frustration. "Blast it! It's like trying to pick a lock with rotten string. Without the key phrase, we're just guessing blind." He pushed the wheel away slightly, the tarnished brass gleaming dully under the lamplight. Could be anything. A line from a forgotten sea shanty, the name of the dockmaster's favorite whore, the number of steps to their old hideout. Gerrod leaned forward, studying the wheel intently. If it was left deliberately, he reasoned, his voice regaining some of its characteristic calm precision, placing it without the means to use it seems illogical, unless the key is separate. Or, Ace countered, tapping a thick finger on the crate beside the wheel, unless the key isn't carried. Maybe it's part of the location. His eyes narrowed, recalling the interior of the dusty guild hall. Moonrats were paranoid bastards, but clever. They liked environmental keys, something you had to see in the right place, at the right time. Gerrod straightened slightly, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. The building itself, we searched for the wheel, for signs of passage. We didn't look for information. He recalled the crumbling walls, the faded remnants of tapestries, the soot-stained ceiling beams. Could markings on the walls, symbols we overlooked, perhaps near where the candle was found? Or carved into a beam, etched onto a loose stone? Ace picked up the thread, his mind racing through the possibilities. Something that wouldn't look like a key to anyone who didn't know what they were looking for, or didn't have the wheel to reference. He looked at Gerrod, the shared realization dawning in their eyes. Damn it all, it means going back. The prospect hung heavy in the damp cellar air. Returning to the derelict guild hall, a place they knew was recently visited by the Temptress, a place potentially watched or trapped, was incredibly risky. But the silent cipher wheel offered no alternative. If the key lay hidden within those decaying walls, inscribed perhaps in plain sight, yet masked as simple graffiti or random damage, then retrieving it was their only path forward to understanding the Temptress's secrets. The decision hung heavy in the cellar's stale air, but the silence of the cipher wheel was more compelling than the risk. "No other choice," Ace grunted, securing the wheel back in its hidden pouch. "Can't let this go cold." Gerrod gave a single, sharp nod, his hand already checking the tension on his bowstring. The faint hope of understanding, perhaps even finding a link to his mother's obscured past, outweighed the inherent danger. Their return journey through the decaying old guild quarter was even more cautious than their previous passage. They moved like ghosts through the oppressive darkness, sticking to the deepest shadows, senses stretched taut. Every rustle of wind through skeletal rafters sounded like a footstep. Every distant clang from the city beyond felt like an alarm. The ruins seemed quieter somehow, holding their breath, aware of the intrusion. Reaching the dead-end alley, they paused, listening intently. Silence. Ace carefully worked the loose board free again, the grating sound seeming deafening in the stillness. He slipped inside first, dagger drawn, peering into the black void. Gerrod followed, the faint scent of old dust and cold stone instantly familiar, yet now charged with a new, specific tension. Inside, the absolute darkness felt heavier, more watchful. Ace didn't risk even the smallest flame this time. They relied on their slowly adjusting night vision and Gerrod's superior senses. They moved directly, silently, back to the area near the wall where the hidden compartment lay beneath the replaced floorboard. Here, their search became meticulous, forensic. Gerrod ran his fingertips lightly over the crumbling plaster of the wall near where the candle stub had rested, searching for etched lines, subtle differences in texture. Ace crouched low, examining the surrounding floorboards, the base of the wall, even the underside of the fallen ceiling timber nearby, looking for anything. A stray carving, a repeated pattern, a sequence of marks that didn't fit the random pattern of decay. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating, amplifying the sound of their own breathing, the thud of their hearts. Every shadow seemed poised to move. Every patch of deeper darkness felt like watching eyes. They were trespassers now, searching for a key they weren't meant to find, acutely aware that the owner, or worse, could return at any moment. Ace continued his systematic scan of the floor and lower walls, his fingers probing cracks and crevices, while Gerrod focused higher, near the cold, soot-stained stones of what might have once been a large hearth. Most bricks were firmly set, coated in grime, but Gerrod's eyes, sensitive to the slightest variations in pattern and shadow, were drawn to one particular brick about chest height. It sat almost flush, yet the mortar line around it seemed thinner, cleaner than the crumbling mortar surrounding its neighbors, much like the floorboard had been. A faint dusting of brick powder lay on the stone beneath it, suggesting recent movement. He reached out slowly, pressing gently against the brick's face. It shifted inwards, pivoting slightly on its base with a faint scraping sound. It wasn't mortared in place. It was loose, designed to be removed. Holding his breath, Gerrod carefully worked his fingertips into the gap, easing the brick outwards. It came free with surprising ease, revealing a shallow cavity behind it. Inside the cavity, etched directly onto the rougher stone surface of the wall behind where the brick had rested, were faint markings. They were deliberately shallow, easily mistaken for random scratches or weathering in poor light. But under Gerrod's intense scrutiny, they resolved into a clear sequence. 3 distinct symbols followed by a short string of letters. The first symbol was a simple starburst. The second resembled a jagged crack or lightning bolt, and the third was a circle with a single dot in the center. Following these were the letters FLOWMYRRH. Ace, Gerrod whispered, the sound sharp in the profound silence. He didn't need to elaborate. He held the brick aside, revealing the hidden inscription. Ace scrambled over, peering closely at the faint etchings. A slow grin spread across his face, visible even in the near darkness. Well, I'll be clever bastards. He recognized the format, symbols likely corresponding to specific rings or settings on the wheel, followed by the keyword itself. Flow merch, an unusual word, likely chosen for its obscurity. They had it, the key, hidden in plain sight, protected by subtlety and decay. The cipher wheel was no longer just an inert relic. It was a potential source of answers. But the discovery brought no relief, only a heightened sense of urgency. They replaced the brick swiftly, making sure it sat flush, and retreated towards the exit, the cryptic sequence burning in their minds, acutely aware that finding the key might just have alerted whatever unseen presence guarded these ruins. They didn't dare linger by the hearth. Retreating silently back towards the narrow entrance, they crouched in the oppressive darkness just inside the loose board, ready to flee at the slightest sound. The air felt thick with unseen watchers. Ace carefully retrieved the cipher wheel, its cool metal a solid presence in his trembling hand. Gerrod, committing the sequence from behind the brick to memory, knelt beside him, his senses scanning the entryway and the alley beyond. All right, Ace breathed, holding the wheel close. The key, symbols first, starburst, lightning, circle dot. He manipulated the tarnished brass rings, aligning specific markers on the different discs according to the sequence Gerrod dictated, the faint clicks echoing slightly in the confined space. Now the word, FLOWMYRRH. He carefully rotated the main alphabet ring until the F aligned with a primary index mark determined by the initial symbols. The mechanism locked softly into place. Set. There were other marks, Gerrod said quietly, his gaze fixed on the wall near the hearth, visualizing the faint etchings he'd noticed earlier but dismissed as random damage. Near where the key was hidden, scratched below it, 5 symbols, barely visible. He described them from memory, A wavy line, a vertical bar with a slash, another circle dot, a simple cross, and a final wavy line. Ace held the now-aligned cipher wheel steady, tilting it to catch the faintest stray light filtering from unseen cracks above. "Okay," he muttered, focusing. "First symbol, wavy line." He located the corresponding symbol on one of the inner rings, traced it across to the aligned alphabet ring. N. He repeated the process, his fingers moving with growing confidence. "Vertical bar with slash gives me W." He paused. "Circle dot again, that's a number, 3. His brow furrowed. "Simple cross, R." He found the final wavy line symbol, 7. He looked up, meeting Gerrod's intense gaze in the gloom. NW3R 7. He repeated the sequence slowly. NW3R 7. It wasn't a word or a name. It was precise, structured. "Coordinates," Ace breathed, realization dawning. "Old city grid system, maybe? Northwest Sector 3, reference point 7? The deliberate placement, the hidden key, the cipher wheel, the encoded message left like graffiti, it all coalesced into a chilling certainty. This wasn't accidental. Someone, likely the Temptress, had left a trail, a coded pointer leading to a specific location within Oswagonia. The question remained, was it a destination, a warning, or the next step in an elaborate, deadly trap? NW3-R7. The coordinates resonated with Ace's deep knowledge of Oswagonia's underbelly. "Northwest Sector 3, that's the old Tanner's Row," he murmured, already picturing the decaying district in his mind. "Down near the slag pit runoff. Gods, place probably smells worse now than it did 50 years ago." Reference point 7. That would likely correspond to a specific landmark or address within that sector, possibly marked on old guild maps, if any still existed. Leaving the silent guild hall behind felt like escaping a tomb. They secured the entrance once more, the faint Moonrat symbols on the lintel now seeming less like historical markers and more like active signposts. They moved quickly, putting distance between themselves and the unsettling stillness of the old guild quarter. Navigating the city by night was second nature to both, though their path took them through districts often shunned by respectable folk. They skirted patrols, melted into shadows, and used alleys choked with refuse as thoroughfares. As they moved northwest, the air quality steadily deteriorated. The scent of damp earth and decay gave way to a sharper, more acrid miasma, the ghost of chemicals, rotting hides, and industrial waste that clung stubbornly to the Tanner's Row district. The buildings here were squat, functional, built of dark, stained stone and rotting timber, many bearing the scars of chemical corrosion. Gutters ran thick with black, sluggish effluent that emitted a gag-inducing stench. Few people were about, mostly shapes huddled in doorways or scurrying figures keeping to the shadows. Following Ace's internal map, they located the area designated R7, a cluster of interconnected buildings dominated by a large, dilapidated structure bearing the faded, peeling sign of Grimstone Tannery. The main building was dark, its windows boarded or broken, emitting an overwhelming reek of stale chemicals, decay, and something vaguely resembling rancid meat. Compared to the dusty silence of the guild hall, this place felt actively unpleasant, steeped in the lingering foulness of its former trade, another perfect forgotten corner for secrets, and likely another Moonrat front from days long past. The stench hit them like a physical blow as they slipped through a gap in the dilapidated fence surrounding the Grimstone Tannery compound. Rotting hides, harsh chemicals, stagnant water, and decades of accumulated filth created a miasma that burned the nostrils and coated the back of the throat. Gerrod fought the urge to gag, his connection to the pure sense of the forest feeling worlds away. Ace merely grimped, seemingly more accustomed to the city's foulest corners. Inside the main tannery building, the darkness was thick, broken only by slivers of moonlight piercing holes in the collapsing roof. Vast, shadowy shapes resolved into enormous wooden vats, some still containing dark, sludge-like remnants that bubbled faintly with putrescence. Rusted chains hung from overhead beams like hanged men, and discarded tools, fleshing knives, scrapers, heavy wooden paddles, lay scattered across the slime-coated floor, hazards for the unwary footstep. "Place is huge," Ace muttered, his voice muffled by the sheer scale of the main processing floor. "Could hide an army in here." He lit the small oil lamp again, its meager glow struggling against the oppressive darkness and casting eerie, dancing shadows across the rotting vats and machinery. "Stick together. Search pattern. Start from the back wall. Work our way forward." They began their systematic search, moving cautiously through the cavernous space. Gerrod scanned the upper levels, the catwalks precarious and crumbling, looking for any sign of recent passage or disturbance. Ace focused lower, checking behind vats, inside empty barrels, peering down into slime-choked drainage channels. The air was thick with the ghosts of industry and decay, every drip of stagnant water echoing like a footstep, every gust of wind through broken windows sounding like a whispered warning. They moved with practiced silence, aware that despite the decay, this place felt less like a tomb and more like a lair, recently abandoned perhaps, but still holding the lingering presence of something dangerous. They worked their way along a row of colossal wooden vats, each large enough to hold several men. Most were empty, save for a thick layer of viscous, foul-smelling sludge coating the bottom. The stench was almost unbearable, clinging to their clothes and hair. Gerrod moved with controlled disgust, his gaze sweeping the shadowed upper reaches, while Ace, seemingly unfazed by the filth, tapped methodically along the vat walls and floors. He paused at one vat near the center of the row. It looked identical to the others. Dark wood stained black with years of chemical exposure, filled with the same noxious sludge. Yet, Ace lingered, running his hand along the slimy interior near the bottom, his brow furrowed. "This one," he muttered, kneeling precariously on the vat's rim, holding the lamp low. "Something ain't right." He poked at the sludge with the tip of his dagger, then used a discarded wooden paddle to scrape away a section of the thickest goo near the center. Beneath the slime, the wooden bottom looked solid, waterlogged, and warped like the rest. But Ace wasn't convinced. He tapped the center section with the pommel of his dagger. The sound was subtly different, less a dull thud, more a slightly hollow thunk. "Aha!" he breathed, a grim smile touching his lips. Using the pry bar again, he carefully worked the tip into a barely visible seam masked by slime and warped wood. With a grunt of effort, he levered upwards. Instead of splintering, a perfectly circular section of the vat bottom, about 2 feet across, lifted smoothly on hidden hinges, revealing a dark cavity beneath. The air that rose from the opening was surprisingly clean compared to the surrounding stench, carrying only a faint metallic scent. Peering down, the lamplight revealed not just an empty space, but a carefully constructed compartment lined with what looked like thick, dull gray lead sheeting. Within this protected cache, nestled securely, lay several items wrapped in oilcloth. It wasn't a random hiding spot. It was a purpose-built, shielded repository designed to protect its contents from the corrosive environment, and perhaps from prying eyes, both mundane and magical. Ace reached carefully into the lead-lined cache, his fingers brushing against the cool, slightly greasy texture of oilcloth bundles. He lifted them out one by one, placing them on the relatively cleaner rim of the vat beside him. The lamplight gleamed dully on the dark, treated fabric. The first bundle, when unwrapped, revealed a collection of tools. Not the rough implements of the tannery trade, but smaller, finer things crafted from dark, non-reflective metal. Slender lockpicks, coils of thin wire, glass cutters, small vials containing dried residues, and several oddly shaped knives clearly designed for stealth and silence rather than brute force. Distinctly thieves' tools, bearing the subtle, practical design favored by the old Moonrat Guild. The second, larger bundle contained several cloaks. They were made of dark, heavy wool, expertly tailored for movement and concealment, with deep hoods designed to shadow the face. Though aged, they were remarkably well preserved, protected from the tannery's corrosive atmosphere by the oilcloth and the lead lining. They smelled faintly of old wool and dust, lacking the overpowering stench of the surrounding environment. The final bundle held the most potential significance. It contained not tools or clothing, but a tightly rolled collection of parchments, tied securely with a leather thong. The parchment felt old but supple, clearly treated for longevity. Ace carefully untied the thong, his fingers handling the roll with reverence. These weren't likely to be tannery ledgers. Given the context, the Moonrat symbols, the cipher wheel, the hidden cache, these parchments promised something far more important. Records, maps, encoded messages, perhaps even the lost history of the vanished guild itself, or the secrets the Temptress sought to protect. They had followed the trail from a derelict guild hall to this foul-smelling tannery, And finally, it seemed they had found the heart of the Moonrat legacy hidden beneath layers of decay and misdirection. Ace handled the rolled parchments with a care that seemed incongruous amidst the tannery's filth. The leather thong untied easily, and he slowly, carefully began to unroll the outermost parchment across the grimy rim of the vat, using small stones scavenged from the floor to weigh down the corners. Gerrod leaned closer, the lamplight reflecting in his intense green eyes, illuminating the fine lines and intricate details emerging on the aged surface. The parchment crackled softly as it unrolled, releasing a dry, papery scent that barely cut through the tannery's pervasive stench. It wasn't covered in script or crude maps of city streets. Instead, it displayed a dense web of precise, fine lines, measurements, annotations in a tiny, meticulous hand, and complex symbols representing structural elements. Cross-sections, floor plans, elevation views, it was undeniably technical, architectural. Blueprints? Ace muttered, his brow furrowed in surprise. He traced a line representing a thick wall, noting calculations written alongside it. Detailed ones, too. Look at this. Load-bearing walls, support beams, even ventilation shafts marked. Gerrod picked up another roll, carefully unfurling it beside the first. It depicted a different structure, but the style was the same, meticulously detailed architectural plans. Walls, corridors, chambers, stairwells, points of access, potential weaknesses, all laid out with an engineer's precision. He scanned the annotations, recognizing symbols for reinforced doors and barred windows. They unrolled a third parchment. Another building, equally detailed. There were no titles indicating which buildings these were, but the level of detail was extraordinary. This wasn't just a thief's rough sketch of a mark. These were professional, comprehensive blueprints. Why? Gerrod murmured, confusion clouding his features. Moonrat tools, cloaks, and architectural plans? What use would a thieves' guild have for such things? Ace ran a finger along a section showing a complex vault mechanism on one blueprint. Infiltration, he answered grimly. Not just smashing a window, getting inside, deep inside, bypassing structural defenses. Knowing a building's bones, that's high-level work. He looked from the detailed plans back towards the lead-lined cache. The cloaks, the tools, the blueprints, it painted a picture of a guild far more sophisticated and ambitious than the gutter rats of legend, or perhaps pointed towards the meticulous planning of the Temptress herself. But plans for what structures remained the crucial, unanswered question. Ace unrolled the largest parchment, its surface depicting a sprawling multi-level structure with complex interlocking wings and heavily fortified sections. He smoothed it flat beside the others, the lamplight casting long shadows across the intricate lines. His eyes scanned the familiar shapes, grand halls, intersecting corridors, defensive towers. Then, his gaze snagged on a specific cluster of rooms in the central, most heavily guarded section. A throne room symbol, adjacent royal apartments, guard barracks. And leading off from a heavily reinforced area marked simply treasury, a series of corridors, chambers, and what looked like pressure plates and rune-marked doorways. His breath caught in his throat. He leaned closer, tracing the path with a trembling finger, disbelief warring with dawning, horrified recognition. No, he whispered, the sound barely audible above the tannery's background drips and sighs. It can't be. He looked up at Gerrod, his face pale beneath the grime, his eyes wide with shock. Gerrod, look at this layout. The Great Hall, the King's Solar, the East Tower Barracks. Gerrod, following Ace's pointing finger, felt a cold dread wash over him, eclipsing even the foul stench of the tannery. He recognized it instantly, not from personal experience, but from countless descriptions, maps discussed in passing. The distinctive hexagon shape of the main building, the position of the grand ballroom, the heavily fortified royal wing. It was unmistakable. The royal palace, Gerrod breathed, the words feeling like shards of ice in his throat. Aye, Ace confirmed grimly, his finger tapping sharply on the heavily annotated section marked treasury. And not just the palace. These notes, these routes. He pointed to markings indicating hidden passages, weak points in walls, patrol timings, and detailed schematics for the massive vault door deep within the treasury. These are plans for getting into the king's vault. The implications crashed down on them with staggering force. Moonrat tools, cloaks, and meticulously detailed blueprints, not just for the royal palace, but specifically targeting the most secure location in the entire kingdom: the vault containing the crown jewels, state secrets, and unimaginable wealth. Why? And how did the Temptress, or whoever reactivated this Moonrat legacy, come to possess such incredibly sensitive, dangerous information? The scope of the conspiracy, hinted at by the arcane theft and the shadowy Temptress, had just expanded exponentially, reaching into the very heart of Oswagonia's power. The sheer audacity of the blueprints left them momentarily stunned, the reek of the tannery forgotten in the face of this revelation. The royal palace, the king's vault. It was a target so monumental, so heavily guarded, that contemplating a breach seemed like madness. Yet, here were the plans, detailed and chillingly practical, hidden alongside the tools of a ghost guild. The Temptress, Gerrod said, his voice tight, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The arcane artifacts were just practice, or perhaps components needed for this. He gestured towards the detailed vault schematics. The Shadowmeister hired her not just for her skill, but for her ambition. Ace nodded slowly, his mind racing, connecting the dots. The Meister controls the streets, the coin purses, the flow of smuggled goods. But this? He swept a hand over the blueprints. This is different. This isn't about controlling the underworld. It's about crippling the kingdom itself. The crown of Oswagonia isn't just jewelry. It's the symbol of royal authority, imbued with ancient magic. He looked at Gerrod, his expression grim. Steal the crown, destabilize the throne, throw the entire realm into chaos, chaos the Meister could exploit. The logic felt inescapable. The high-profile theft of arcane items handled by a specialist, the intricate Moonrat methods resurfacing, the fear she inspired even in the Meister's own men, and now these meticulously detailed plans for the ultimate heist. It all pointed towards a single, terrifying conclusion. The Temptress, using the forgotten knowledge and tools of the Moonrats, was orchestrating an attack on the heart of the kingdom for her employer, the Shadowmeister. The scale was unimaginable, the potential consequences catastrophic. They had stumbled upon not just a criminal conspiracy, but a plot that threatened the very foundations of Oswagonia. Gerrod leaned closer to the blueprints, his gaze sweeping over the intricate lines and meticulous annotations. Beyond the shock of the target, a part of his mind, the part owned by years of tracking elusive prey and understanding complex natural systems, couldn't help but assess the plans themselves. He traced the proposed routes, noting the exploitation of forgotten servant passages, the circumvention of known guard patrols, the detailed understanding of structural weak points. The level of detail was breathtaking. His fingers hovered over a cross-section, showing the layers of stone, metal reinforcement, and magical wards surrounding the king's vault. The annotations here were dense, referencing specific arcane dampeners, pressure-sensitive floor sections, and complex locking mechanisms that combined intricate mechanics with potent sorcery. Whoever drew these plans possessed not only intimate architectural knowledge, but also a deep understanding of magical defenses. The skill required, Gerrod murmured, half to himself, awe mixing with dread. This isn't mere thievery. This requires a master strategist, an engineer, likely a skilled mage, and operatives capable of near supernatural stealth. He recalled the Temptress's fluid, silent movement, her ability to vanish without a trace. She wasn't just an operative for this plan. She seemed tailor-made for it, perhaps even its architect. The audacity was staggering. To conceive of such a plan, let alone possess the knowledge and resources to potentially execute it, spoke of a level of ambition and ruthlessness far exceeding typical criminal enterprises. It suggested an enemy operating on a different scale entirely, one who saw the kingdom's most sacred symbols not with reverence, but as mere obstacles in a grand, dangerous game. The blueprints weren't just plans. They were a declaration of intent, a chilling testament to the skill and terrifying ambition of the force they now faced. Gerrod's fingers traced the intricate diagram depicting the king's vault locking mechanism. A complex interplay of massive tumblers, arcane wards, and what looked like magically reinforced bars. The sheer complexity was dizzying, a testament to generations of royal paranoia and magical craftsmanship designed to be utterly impenetrable. He leaned closer, absorbing the details, trying to comprehend the layers of defense. As his hand hovered directly over the drawing of the central locking cylinder, a sudden, unexpected warmth bloomed against his chest. It wasn't the damp chill of the tannery air or the heat radiating from his own body. It was a gentle, persistent pulse emanating from beneath his tunic, from the simple leather thong around his neck. He instinctively touched the source, a smooth, teardrop-shaped pendant of deep green stone, a keepsake his mother, Elysia, had given his father shortly before her exile from Verdant Haven. It was cool to the touch, usually inert, just a piece of polished rock he wore for remembrance. But now it pulsed with a soft, internal warmth, a rhythmic beat against his skin that coincided with the pulse in his own veins. He frowned, pulling the pendant out from under his tunic. In the dim lamplight, the deep green stone seemed to glow faintly from within, its surface warmer than the surrounding air. The pulsing sensation intensified slightly as he held it directly over the vault lock diagram on the blueprint. It wasn't painful or alarming, more like a gentle thrum of recognition, a sympathetic vibration resonating with the arcane energies depicted on the parchment. He looked from the glowing pendant to the blueprint, then back again. This necklace, a simple gift from his father, had never reacted to anything before. Why now? Why here, in response to the schematics of the Royal Vault's lock? The unexpected warmth, the gentle pulse. It felt less like a reaction and more like an awakening, another unsettling thread connecting his own past, his mother's legacy, and the dangerous conspiracy unfolding before them. The warmth pulsing from the green stone pendant intensified, becoming a focused beam of gentle energy directed at the blueprint beneath Gerrod's hand. As the warmth flowed, the intricate ink lines depicting the vault's mechanism began to shimmer faintly. It wasn't a trick of the lamplight or his strained eyes. A subtle, ethereal overlay of pale silver light coalesced directly over the ink, tracing the complex wards and locking bars. This shimmering light wasn't chaotic energy. It formed a delicate, interwoven pattern, almost like filigree, possessing a distinct signature. It felt ancient, resonant, and undeniably elven in its structure. The flowing lines, the subtle balance, the connection to natural forms echoed in the design. But layered within the elven grace was something more personal, something uniquely familiar that resonated deep within Gerrod's soul, bypassing conscious thought and striking straight at his core memories. It was the specific way the silver light seemed to smell faintly of pine needles after rain, the precise gentle warmth that reminded him of her hands tending his childhood scrapes, the almost inaudible hum that harmonized with the memory of lullabies sung in a forgotten elven dialect. It was the unique arcane fingerprint of his mother, Elysia. He snatched his hand back as if burned, the pendant swinging against his chest, its glow fading slightly now that the direct connection was broken. The shimmering overlay on the blueprint also faded, vanishing back into the mundane ink lines, leaving only the image burned into Gerrod's mind. His breath hitched. He stared at the blueprint, then down at the pendant, then back again, his face paling, his mind reeling. The evidence was irrefutable, instantly recognizable to him in a way no one else could understand. These weren't just Moonrat plans. The intricate details, the understanding of elven warding techniques integrated into the vault's defense, the specific way the arcane countermeasures were depicted, it bore the undeniable, indelible signature of his mother's magic. Elysia hadn't just been associated with the Moonrats. She hadn't just known about these plans. She had contributed to them. Her unique blend of elven arcane knowledge and human ingenuity was woven into the very fabric of these blueprints for robbing the heart of the kingdom. The revelation struck him with the force of a physical blow, shattering his perception of the woman who had taught him reverence for nature, leaving him adrift in a sea of devastating questions. The world seemed to tilt beneath Gerrod's feet. The damp, foul air of the tannery felt thin, refusing to fill his lungs. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, crushing silence that filled his mind. The warmth from the pendant still radiated against his skin, but it felt like a brand now, searing the truth onto him. Elysia, his mother. The woman who had shown him the sacred geometry in a spider's web, who had taught him the names of the stars in the elven tongue, whose gentle hands had seemed capable only of healing and nurturing. That same woman had applied her unique arcane knowledge, her intimate understanding of elven wardcraft, To this, to meticulously mapping the weaknesses of the kingdom's most secure vault, to planning a theft that could shatter Oswagonia. He stared blankly at the intricate lines on the parchment, but he no longer saw blueprints. He saw his mother's hand guiding the quill, her brow perhaps furrowed in the same concentration she applied to deciphering ancient texts or identifying rare herbs. The image was grotesque, impossible, a violation of every cherished memory he possessed. No. The denial screamed silently within him. It had to be a mistake, a trick of the light, a misinterpretation, some lingering magic in the pendant reacting wrongly. His mother, exiled for dabbling in forbidden knowledge perhaps, but knowledge used for understanding, for healing. Not for this. Not for grand larceny, for treason, for a plot hatched in the shadows with thieves and Meister's cutthroats. The stench of the tannery, moments ago overwhelming, faded into insignificance. The chill of the damp stone leached into his bones, unnoticed. His entire reality seemed to contract, focusing down onto the faded ink lines shimmering with the ghost of her magic. The pendant felt impossibly heavy against his chest. This wasn't just about the Temptress or the Shadow Meister anymore. This was about Elysia, about everything he thought he knew. Had her exile been a lie? Had her gentle connection to nature been a facade? Who was she? The foundations of his identity crumbled, leaving him staring into an abyss of disbelief and a betrayal that cut deeper than any blade. Ace, initially caught up in the strategic implications of the palace heist, finally registered Gerrod's unnerving stillness. The half-elf wasn't just shocked, he looked utterly devastated, his face ashen beneath the grime, his eyes wide and fixed on the blueprints with an expression of profound horror. He seemed barely present in the dank tannery, his usual grounded calm completely shattered. Even the ever-present pendant, now quiescent against his chest, seemed to pulse with a residual, unsettling energy only Gerrod could perceive. "Gerrod?" Ace asked, his voice rough but laced with genuine concern. He reached out tentatively, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. Gerrod flinched slightly, his gaze snapping towards Ace as if roused from a nightmare, but his eyes remained distant, unfocused. "What is it, elf? See a ghost? Another trap?" Gerrod shook his head slowly, mechanically. He swallowed hard, his throat working, struggling to form words. He lifted a trembling hand, pointing not at the overall layout, but specifically at the intricate diagrams of the vault's arcane defenses they had just examined. The magic, he stammered, his voice hoarse, barely a whisper. The signature on the wards. He touched the pendant resting against his chest. It reacted, showed me. He trailed off, unable to articulate the impossible truth. Ace frowned, glancing from Gerrod's stricken face back to the mundane ink lines on the parchment. Signature. What are you talking about? It's just ink. Gerrod closed his eyes for a moment, taking a ragged breath. When he opened them again, they were filled with a raw anguish Ace had never witnessed in his stoic friend. Not just ink, Gerrod choked out, the words tearing from him. The way the wards are drawn, the specific structure of the arcane countermeasures, it has an overlay, an arcane signature only I would recognize. He met Ace's confused gaze, the terrible certainty hardening his features even as his voice broke. It's hers, Ace. It's my mother's, Elysia. Her magic is woven into these plans. Ace stared at Gerrod, dumbfounded. The gruff dwarf took a half step back, his expression shifting from confusion to stunned disbelief. Your mother? He repeated, the words rough, incredulous. Elysia? Her magic? On these? He waved a hand vaguely over the blueprints depicting the royal vault, as if the idea itself was too absurd to grasp. But she was exiled decades ago, from Verdant Haven, 4. He trailed off, remembering the whispers about forbidden knowledge, not grand larceny. He looked again at the blueprints, then back at Gerrod's agonized face. The pieces clicked together in a new, horrifying configuration. The rumors of Elysia's ties to the Moonrats, dismissed for years as alley gossip. The resurgence of Moonrat methods. The Temptress using their signs, their tools, hiding them in their old haunts. And now, Elysia's unique arcane signature woven into the most critical part of these palace heist plans. Gods below. Ace breathed, scrubbing a hand over his face, the grime mixing with sudden sweat. The implications were staggering, rewriting everything they thought they knew about the conspiracy. The Shadow Meister, the Temptress, the stolen artifacts. They suddenly seemed like secondary concerns. overshadowed by the immediate, terrifying questions that flooded the foul air of the tannery. If this is Elysia's work, Ace stammered, struggling to process it, then was the Temptress working with her? Is this Temptress just carrying out Elysia's old plan? The idea seemed insane, yet the evidence lay starkly before them on the aged parchment. Gerrod looked lost, adrift. I don't know, he whispered, shaking his head. The signature felt old, yet resonant, like an echo. He touched the pendant again, as if seeking answers from the inert stone. Could she still be alive? The question hung between them, heavy with desperate hope and terrifying possibility. If Elysia was alive, what did that mean? Was she imprisoned, in hiding? Or worse, was she actively involved in this plot now? The objective shifted seismically. Stopping the heist remained crucial, but now, intertwined with it, was a desperate, personal quest. Who was Elysia, truly? What was her ultimate goal in creating these plans? And what was her connection, past or present, to the deadly, enigmatic Temptress who walked in her shadow? The path ahead became infinitely more complex, leading not just towards the kingdom's vault, but into the dark, hidden corners of Gerrod's own history. The revelation hung heavy in the foul air, thick and suffocating as the tannery stench. The meticulously drawn blueprints of the royal palace vault lay spread across the vat rim, no longer just evidence of a criminal conspiracy, but a direct, undeniable link to Elysia. Ace stared at the plans, then at Gerrod's devastated face. So, he said slowly, his voice rough, trying to piece together the fractured reality. This madness, it was hers? Your mother's grand design? Not just some job for the Meister? He shook his head, grappling with the implications. Does the Temptress even know? Or is she just a pawn following old instructions? The terrifying alternative flickered in his eyes. Or, God's forbid, Gerrod, could she be? He couldn't bring himself to finish the thought. The possibility that the feared Temptress and the lost Elysia were one and the same, too monstrous to voice directly. Gerrod looked up, his green eyes haunted. The immediate threat, the Meister, the destabilization of the kingdom, the theft of the crown, warred fiercely with the desperate personal need that now consumed him. His mother. Alive? Involved? A mastermind behind a plot threatening the realm she seemingly abandoned? The heist, Ace pressed, forcing practicality through the shock. If these plans are active, if the Temptress is moving now, we have to assume the target is the crown for the Meister's benefit. We have to interfere, stop it before it happens, warn the king, bolster the vault's defenses. Or, Gerrod interrupted, his voice strained but regaining a sliver of focus, we focus on the source, on her. He touched the pendant again, the cold stone offering no comfort, only questions. If Elysia is alive, if she's connected to this, she's the key. Why this plan? Why now? Is the Meister even the true beneficiary, or is there something else at play? Finding his mother, understanding her motives, felt like the only path that could lead to the whole truth, not just the immediate symptom of the heist. But the risk. The choice lay starkly before them, illuminated by the single flickering lamp amidst the decay. Pursue the immediate threat, attempting to thwart the palace heist based on the assumption it served the Shadow Meister, potentially saving the kingdom, but leaving the mystery of Elysia and the Temptress's true role dangerously unresolved. Or gamble everything on finding Elysia, delving deeper into the shadows of the past, seeking the architect of the plan, while the clock ticked down on the potential theft of the crown itself. The blueprints seemed to mock them, silent witnesses to a conspiracy far deeper and more personal than they could ever have imagined.
The trail of the Moonrats, the mystery of the Temptress, has led them to this. Not a hidden stash of gold, not a list of names, but blueprints. Meticulously detailed plans for the most audacious crime imaginable. A heist on the royal palace. The scope of the conspiracy is larger than they ever dreamed. But who is behind it? The Shadow Meister? The Temptress? Or the ghost of Elysia herself? Join us for the next thrilling chapter as they uncover the chilling purpose behind these plans in Chapter 10, Raven Shadow Echoes. The game has changed. Subscribe and find out who the true enemy is.